with pocket snakes. I'm just cutting some strips down for cutting some strips down. So these are tapered strips, and I'm going to be adjusting them as I go. So right now the taper's increasing. So as it starts digging in a little bit down here, I'm bumping back the bevel a little bit to compensate. These are kind of step tapered. So this is a combination beveler that I bought from a place called Why Not Lace. They make this beveler or sell it. I think they're out of Montana, but I'm not sure if I remember that correctly. Wow. Now the taper's going the other direction. So, hi, thank you for joining me. This is Chuck with Pocket Snakes. I'm beveling some long tapered strips for a whip. Beveling it at 30 degrees right now. Hi. AKSS 4. Hello. Hi. So this is a tool for beveling and dressing lace. Yes, this is leather. It's veg tan cowhide. It happens to be gold painted on the skin side, and I'm beveling the back side of the lace to build a whip out of it. Oh yeah, subscribe. There's lots of interesting stuff. I mean, this is probably not the most exciting of videos because I'm just beveling the underside of some string, but it is interesting because I'm trying to adjust it on the fly as this gets narrower and narrower for this particular tool because the fence is on the outside of where the cutting surface is, so you have to keep knocking it down. Oh, sorry to hear that. To the person in the comments, I'm just plugging away. But I've got 4 of these long strips of leather that taper. At its thickest point, which is the middle, it's about half an inch, and it's about an eighth of an inch down at the extreme tails. And I can cut these by hand with a credit card or a hotel room card and a razor blade, but this tool makes it pretty easy to get a more consistent bevel than I do by hand. Trimming it down so I can put the feather back through maybe. Oh, that's annoying. Nope. Okay. I'm going to open it up and slide it in. I'm going to freehand it a little bit here. Make it tighter. I'm building a ceremonial whip. I just got finished with 5 that I did. I've got the feathers, which is what I call these 4 strands, which make 8 plate that are long and tapered. I've got 4 of these feathers already cut, so I'm going to make a 6th just to have it on hand. Probably for when they call next year wanting the same thing. But I'm a whip maker, so I like making whips. But I'll make all sorts of braided items. I just find it interesting to process string or lace and try and make the most consistent string I can to make the end product as pretty as I can. I guess you can get obsessed about almost anything in this world. With me, it's tension and trying to build whips that are really beautiful. The middle of this string is about the same width for ways, and then it tapers back down. I've got a bunch of videos up if you guys like to see people make stuff. So, make all this stuff by hand. But I have this tool, which I use mostly to make contiguous lace that's beveled. Beveling helps it lay fast with less effort rolling it. Makes a smoother whip. just one nice step. If you get the best string you can to build something braided, you'll have a good or better result in the end if you take the time to make the string that you start with as perfect as you can. Basically trying to match the amount I'm taking off at 30 degrees to the width of the lace as the lace changes width. So you can see how narrow it's getting compared to where it was in the middle. Oops. And when you get down to the last 6 inches or so, it's almost easier to run the last 6 inches through by hand. But you can see it starts off at like about 1/8 of an inch. And then it goes up in width to about 1/2 inch. Then it goes back down to 1/8 of an inch. Now this strip is about 9 feet long, 10 feet long. You can see the beveled character of the edges when I'm done with the beveling process. So that's one string done. And this one is square edged, so same thing, it's gold in color. Tighten it up. And then as it gets wider, I move the fence. And the goal is to take it down to where the edge of this is meeting or almost meeting. I don't want to really change the shape of the string. I'm just changing it by knocking off the corner at a 30-degree bevel. So as the width gets wider, it requires a bigger gap in the tool. And I like to do these things live and share it with people who might be interested in working in leather or building stuff or maybe making whips. But every 4 or 5 inches, the width changes on this that I cut, and I rough cut it. Like a lot of the things I do, it's a pursuit of a perfection you'll never quite get to. Kangaroo is nice, but this is cowhide. Just the person's in California, so can't ship kangaroo stuff to California. So you can build it out of cowhide or horsehide or something else. Now it's starting to taper the other direction. I'm going to make it go narrower. As long as you can keep the blade in the leather and not let it get away from the edge. And the goal is really to get that blade to meet right where the right where the leather. I tend to tighten it up with a pair of pliers because the blade it gets dull, and you can watch how it moves through the leather, and you can tell that it's dull. So these are single edge Schick blades, like Schick injector blades they call it. This is what this blade happens to be, but I use scalpel blades and other things all the time. So, but I'm happy you guys joined me today. If you are interested in leather working or whip making or such things, you might really enjoy subscribing to the channel because I share what I do as I'm doing it a lot of times. It's not super exciting to sit and watch somebody braid sometimes, but you get to see stuff like this that nobody gets to see. And honestly, from an angle, even if you were standing in the room, you couldn't have your head this close to where I'm working because I wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing. So even if you were sitting at my place, you wouldn't be able to get this close to the tool and get this good a view as to what I'm doing. So it's taken me a while to figure out a workable setup to be able to share using this particular tool because the overhead lights will make the video flicker, which is irritating to everybody. And I'm not cutting through the skin side at all, just the flesh side. So this offcut just kind of falls apart. And as it gets wider, it'll scooch over. And when it does, you'll see the edge of this lace get white, which means I'm cutting through the surface slightly. And that's when you'll see me open it up a little bit to try and remain just taking the edge off instead of cutting through the skin side. And I wondered if I could use this tool to cut tapers or not. And this is how I do it. There may be other ways of doing it, but I'll share how I do things because they work fairly quickly and efficiently, or I'd still be looking for a different way to do it. And the goal is I want to be able to make all 4 of these long tapered, double tapered strips as identical as I can. That way, as I'm braiding the 8 plates down, I'll have a really nice set of strings that I'm braiding the whip out of. And I put a lot of time into stuff that I don't think everybody does, because I'm kind of a little more than a little obsessed with trying to get what I want out of the materials. But you guys are welcome to type questions. I can't type back because, well, obviously my hands are busy, but I'll try and answer questions. And I try and talk about what I'm doing. People come and go, and I'll have 100 to 200 people watching me while I'm working, and I'm always grateful that you guys took your time out of your day to join me in my beveling of leather, in this case. Getting down to the last 6 inches of this. But you can see this strip gets wider and wider. And how even that 30-degree bevel is on this whole piece as it goes back narrower and narrower and narrower. But like I said, this is a ceremonial whip I'm building. So it's so if I touch this wheel back here and pull it this way, it widens the fence. It opens the fence up by a 64th of an inch or a 32nd of an inch, depending on if I drag it all the way across or just halfway across. Sometimes my finger won't catch quite right. I won't get all the way onto it and it'll do less. You can't understand what I'm doing. I'm taking a long tapered strip of leather that's square, so you can see how square this is, where it's just been rough cut out of cowhide, and I'm beveling the underside. This is the top side, but I'm beveling the underside in preparation for braiding. When you braid a bunch of pieces and interlace them, they lay flatter if the edges are trimmed off the back, and this is a piece of offcut that's a triangle that's at 30 degrees. So it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And this tool is called is made by Wynot. It's called a combination beveler because it comes with a head. This is the 30-degree head on here. And it has another attachment that lets you trim lace up evenly. That is a vertical piece. And then there's a 45-degree piece. So if you want to bevel it at 45, you can. But it does a good job of holding the blade at a consistent angle and taking some of the human variables out of it versus tying it off to a tree and walking backwards with a pocket knife and beveling it, which I also can do, but I can be more consistently consistent with this particular tool. So and now that this width is going down on the other side of the feather, I'm pushing the wheel back the other direction, which brings the fence in. With the goal being, I don't want to change the width of the string. I want to knock the edge off the underside at 30 degrees and bevel the bottom of the lace or the string that I'm braiding, or that I will be braiding with. And if I don't adjust it as fast as the taper changes, then I'll cut out and not be cutting the correct amount off. This blade's getting dull. I'm going to have to change it. You can see the leather's wiggling and it's talking. And you can feel it in your fingertips if you pay attention that the leather's balling up on the front, and it'll dent. There's a little dent in there. I don't know if you can see it. It'll dent the string a little bit. Because yes, it's cutting, but it's also catching and balling up under the blade. Okay, I'm going to change this blade real quick. I've got a little box with a slit in it so I don't accidentally drop it on the floor and or cut myself. For those of you interested in the subject, here's a trick. You got a Schick injector blade. It's got a shiny silver surface. If you mark it with a Sharpie, you can tell what part of the blade you've used. Of course, I dropped the Sharpie. But just that little blue-black line shows you where you've rubbed the Sharpie off. There's a washer here, so you have to push down and against the stem with the washer to slide the blade underneath if you don't want to jam the blade. And then I've been using a pair of pliers just to snug that blade down, because it as soon as it encounters enough resistance, and with veg tan it encounters resistance pretty consistently, it will catch and act up. I don't know that I've got the blade up high enough here. I want to make sure it'll cut through the top layer skin. I have the blade up just a hair more. Now, you don't have to use this fence. You can actually just freehand this if you want to adjust the attack angle like so, and you can just peel it on your own. But having the fence locked, not locked, just snugged, you can be more consistent with how evenly it pulls the string through. So, does anybody else have questions? Hi, Reshlin7. Yes, it's a very satisfying process. I find this soothing, or I wouldn't do it, much like I find braiding soothing, or I'd be very hard pressed to set and braid. I find it relaxing instead of stress inducing. I find the process of cutting strips out of cowhide relaxing too. This is out of a veg tan cowhide. And veg tanning is a process where this hide lives underwater in baths of tannins and slowly cooks or denatures the protein to turn it from rawhide into leather. It's quite a lengthy process. It stays underwater, but the water has a high pH, which keeps the bacteria from eating it, and the air being kept away means that the fungus can't eat it. But it's a very satisfying process of now the taper is starting to get narrower, so moving the fence in, which is pushing that. You push it this way and touch it. I've only had this tool for a few months, but it is a fantastic tool. Especially if you're making a consistent width of lace. If you have a taper, it's harder to use this tool. It's not really designed for that, but I've come up with workarounds to do what I need to do. And then I discovered people liked watching what I was doing with it, so since I've had a YouTube channel for a while, I've got quite a few videos on, even cutting rawhide string and braiding and throwing whips and making whips and getting down to about 1/8 of an inch. Get down to the other end. So you can see it starts off pretty narrow. And it gets fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. And then it stays about the same thickness or width. And then it gets narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower. And while you're braiding, you can also adjust the taper with a razor blade and or a scalpel, either one. And hotel room card or credit card. Oh. Well, thank you for all the loves. I'm starting off with the 1/8 inch section or so here. It's getting wider, so I need to go down to loosen it up a little bit. You'll see it walk back over to the edge. Hi, Kev Dove. Rashkin. I find it very soothing to set and cut leather. If you listen to the blade and listen to it with your fingertips, you can tell when it's chattering or getting dull. But I try and share what I do with the world because people are curious about how to do things, and I pretty much have figured a lot of stuff out that I always wanted to do. And I figured out through a lot of trial and error how to get the results I want. I think I've reached that point where it isn't getting any narrower. It's about to start getting narrower. So I'm going to start moving the wheel the other direction. And the goal is really to bevel this at 30 degrees all the way down without changing the taper very much. So I'm trying really hard not to cut too much of the skin side off. Because that would be changing the width of the strip. Now the string coming off, the skiff that's coming off is wiggling a bunch, telling me it's not cutting as well. It's starting to chatter and not cut. So you bump the blade up, tighten it back down. Like I said, this taper is rough cut, so it's got some areas where it bumped out because I did it by hand. So I don't really consider this tool itself by hand, even though it's a hand tool. Getting down to the end, I'm going to go through by hand here, and I'm not running it against the fence anymore. I've changed the attack angle. I'll cut the tip, and so it's got a little bit of feather I can kind of feed through. So I can grab hold of it from the other side, tighten it up. Open it. So as the taper changes, I'm opening it up wider. Now it's at the widest point basically for a foot. And then the taper will start to decline. It'll be a smaller taper. Start having to push the wheel the other direction. Yeah, I'm building a whip. It's like an old school lightsaber. I think everybody who's all the civilizations that ever domesticated animals developed whips. So whips have been around a long time. So you'll notice this isn't contacting the fence anymore. I'm just pinning it and drawing it through with an attack angle. And the two 60-degree bevels leave this triangular shape. And then you can see the triangle will get wider. Now it's got a plateau. So this is 5/6 ounce that I was doing. Or sorry, 4 or 5 ounce cowhide. And ounces in leather are 64ths of an inch, in case anybody ever wondered that. You can see it get wider and wider and wider. And then the strip gets narrower and narrower and narrower. Some idea as to what the profile looks like. Yeah, whips are good for making noise and getting things moving. And getting people to pay attention or back up. They're a good signaling device. A lot of the shorter whips are used for mushing dogs. Yeah, in this case, it's not laces for my new shoes. So, but if you have a piece of leather that's tapered and you want to turn it into beveled string, and you want a consistent width, you can use this tool to make. I think I've got it set to about a quarter inch. Yeah, tighten it up a little bit. So this is the lock on this. It pinches the fence down, and that lets you cut a consistent bevel down. And then you can turn the same piece of string through the other direction. You can bevel it the other direction. So if you want to make braiding material out of leather, it's one way to make strips without too much drama. Now this piece was beveled the other direction. So these are the scraps. You can put them back through and you can make probably a second piece almost. Let's see if that's true out of that strip. So you can see the bottom side's beveled. You guys want to see more of the process? Let me see if I can adjust this camera and get it. Tighten up the tripod here because the stupid thing wants to slip. See if I can put it back. Well, hello to you too. How long does it take to complete it all? Well, the paint takes a day to dry in this case because, again, it's like this is a metallic gold color paint that's acrylic. It's painted on the skin side. And then you have to let it dry for a day. I recommend 2 days. And then you cut the feathers, and in this case I'm doing an 8 plate. So there's 4 very long feathers. And those are the golden feathers, if you will. And making the core takes some time. So this is the core. This is a shot bag full of shot, and it's got a bolster. The bolster's kind of tacked down, and decided to try and, in this case, use a 3M adhesive stuff to just lock the bolster in place, because otherwise it moves around while they work. Then you need some braiding compound, in this case tallow and beeswax. And it takes me about 3 days to make one of these from start to finish. But here's some beeswax and beef tallow. I've got 4 feathers. So there's the 4 feathers that I just did. You take the tallow and run it along the length. And you run it along the length. Now for a 3-foot whip, you need about 4.5-foot long strips on each side. So that makes these strips about 9 feet. It was a long cow, so I found a big cowhide this time. That way there'd be less corners. It's not the only way I do it. Sometimes I stitch the feathers together. I had to go get more tallow because so, and the bolster in this case is a triangular piece. There's one. I'm trying to make sure I got the length the same on each of these. So I've got the center bite of each of these double feathers, which will help because the taper is more or less the same. It'll help keep them even. Now, I'm going to end up cutting this off right in here. So I'm just going to do a straight start. You could do a square start, doesn't matter. But I'm going to do a straight start. Bring it around. I'm just doing under 2/2, just a whip maker plate. Jam that up. The first foot of this goes really fast, but then as the strips get narrower, it takes longer and longer. So, and these just have a bolster and an overlay. So they're very simple construction. Most of what I do have a couple layers of plating in them. But it takes a lot of patience and focus, yeah. It everything I do seems to take longer and take more attention, time and attention than I want to do, but I have not quite an unlimited well of patience, but pretty close to it, or I wouldn't do what I do. Shooting videos takes more time and patience than the braiding, because the braiding itself I find soothing. Shooting the videos requires having the house quiet for the most part. Because they'll take a live stream down if they hear something in the background that they think is music or stuff like that. Make sure you're not getting gaps. So you'll notice the angle of the plating stays about the same because as the diameter decreases, the width of these strands is decreasing for the most part. And the more closely you can match the width to what's required to properly go around the diameter of the decreasing cone shape, the better the angle will hold up without causing munchy little bits and gaps and fighting you. And always check, turn it around and look. When you're pulling on it to lay the strand, it's tightening 4 up from that. So like if you turn it around, there's gaps right here. This is all loose, and up here it's tight. So but I'm getting old. My hands won't let me sit and do a bunch of plating for hours like I used to, or braiding. So but I thought I would plate up one just to show you what the process sort of looks like. One of the reasons people plate braided, taper braided whips like this is they plate up faster than having to drop strands. There's some advantages to it. And I'm not the fastest platter. I just try to get it as perfect as I can so the running tension remains. Tie that off for now, but you can get an idea as to the tapered nature of that. Yeah, if you tighten it up from pulling forward, you will get it to tighten up faster and you can plate faster. I just like to tighten it up, make sure that as I go, all that lays as nice as I can. Tracy Villabos, say hi. Hi. Float switch, beautiful. Well, thank you. I try. These are ceremonial whips. I have a person that uses them at an award ceremony of some sort, and but there's an hour worth of knot tying once I get the whip to plating done. And I do different things when I'm doing the whips. One of the things that will happen is down at the bottom down here after right at the end of the shop bag, I'll lay down Kevlar, and then as I run out of leather, I'll drop the leather inside the Kevlar and turn the hole into the whip into a Kevlar whip. And that way the leather whip doesn't die as fast. There's lots of ways to do everything in this world. This is just how I've been going about it. And it may look like I'm jerking on these strands. I'm just pulling 35 or 40 pounds of tension or more on each strand to seat it. It just helps it seat. And putting that much tension on cowhide, if it's going to snap, it'll break. And you'll have to cut another feather and start all over with the braiding. Or maybe have to cut 4 more feathers and start all over with the braiding. But after a week of doing this, my hands are killing me. So yesterday I did nothing but heel knots for 5 that I made. And this is the 6th. So that's the one hint I would give you, or tip I would give you, if you're going to make 6. If you need to make 5 of something, you should cut materials and prepare to make 6, because if one screws up in the process of what you're doing, then you've got a whole nother one ready to go. Okay, so now this is a handy tool as well. So this allows you, while it's hanging, to come in and skive off a little bit off of that triangle in a controlled way. Let you flatten off or flatten out the, narrow down the strip as you get down there. Handy as a shirt pocket. Okay. And that is a useful little tool for tapering the end of the whip down, helping it lay more flat. And this one needs to be, well, it doesn't, I don't need to do anything special with it. But if you like watching people make stuff or like talking to people, if you ask questions, I'll try and answer your questions as I'm working on stuff. I've got to cut off some Kevlar here. Out of the way, pup. Oh, see if I can turn on. Is there a light here? Give it a little bit of light. So this is some aircraft wiring harness tape that's Kevlar. And it's about 90 pound. It's a 1/10 of an inch by 100th of an inch thick. And it will transition in and then become the tip of this whip, giving the cowhide enough strength to stand up should somebody want to go and throw it a whole bunch every day for a year. Not that most ceremonial things get thrown for a year, but it also bolsters how weak the cowhide is as the core disappears and provides the core material as the core goes away. So there's 2 pieces that are 4.5 feet long and 2 pieces that are 3 foot long, and I'm putting at the end of a 3-foot whip, but most will get consumed in the process of what I'm doing, because it will become the eye. Close the bolster up, and the end of the shop bag gets compressed here. And this stuff is super strong. Like, it'll cut your hands before you can break these 1/10 of an inch strips, 3mm, 2mm strips of Kevlar. They're unbelievably tough. Missed a braid. And I'd have fingernails if I didn't break them off every time I did this stuff. And the nice part with fabric materials, you can use a straight pin to sort of pin them in place. Back. Out. 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 You can come in with your course it gets gummified. But that is some tough stuff. Yep. New scalpel blade. Nice part with scalpel blades, you can put a new scalpel blade on pretty quick. And you can quickly and easily create your taper you want. And as you lay the strips down, you can also taper them. And that way, as you drop these into the core, they'll be much more suited to what you need. But you don't need a lot of fancy tools to do this kind of work. You can just freehand stuff. It's just a skill you have to figure out the hand shapes for, and the hardest thing is learning not to cut your fingers. You're going. And then you go back to it. Hi. If you guys have any questions, you can always ask. And I do make things look easier than they actually are, for those of you that are asking questions about stuff like that. And the nice part is you can always unbraid it a bit, bring it down, rebraid it. And the nerve-wracking part is once you've brought it down in thickness and then in width, the strands get very weak in cowhide, but you just have to pay a lot of attention to what you're doing and hope you didn't overdo stuff. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the Kevlar now. Pick up the Kevlar. Pick up the Kevlar. pull the pin on the Kevlar. One, two, three. Okay, I'm going to drop that in. Okay, drop that one. Am I off camera? I'm at the bottom of the camera. Okay. Yeah, it's still like on the edge of the camera. Get it up high enough I can work on it more. Well, hello, thank you for tuning in. Bring that one down. down, go under here. Anyway. Okay. This little short one goes into the center now. This little short one will go into the center next. Okay, so this one now drops in. That one gets pulled into the center. That one will get dropped into the center as well. So now it's just 8 plates of Kevlar. It's just an under 2 over 2. The nice part is the Kevlar bolsters the weakness of the leather strips as the leather strips get too small. And it's not as pretty as I want it to be, but allows that core to be as long as, allows there to be a true core all the way into, or most of the way into the center of the whip. Turn that off. I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. Take out this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to put a pin in it. And that's kind of how that goes. Thank you guys very much for paying attention. How many of you guys are still watching, interested in whip making? I'm giving my hands a break for a minute so I can answer some questions and I'm not driving myself insane. So this is a useful tip for those of you interested in being able to make loops. This has a piece of 275 paracord inside of a piece of whipmaker cord. It's just a hollow tube, but you can pin it up behind your work or just hold it up behind your work and give it the length you want to where you want the loop to be. And then you can use that to draw the core back through after you drop a couple strands of the Kevlar, 4 of the strands of the Kevlar. It's at 8 strands now. So and it holds a channel open so that you can pull the Kevlar on through. There's no reason to really crank down on this Kevlar here, because after we pull it through, it'll tighten itself up. We just want to snug it up as we go. And then you'll notice I've got 4 long strands and 4 short strands of the Kevlar, because we started with 3-foot pieces and 3-foot pieces and 4.5-foot pieces. You see the last little bit of the leather. Alrighty, so I'm going to drop this strand into the center. Drop that strand into the center. Pull this piece to the back so that it leaves and hangs out the back. Hang this one out the back. I'm going to drop this strand straight into the center. Pull it by this strand into the center. down to a 4-plate. Drop this one out to the back. Followed by this one out to the back. And now we're running out of the black down here, which is holding our tube open. So the core is going to go out the back. I'm just going to braid a 4-plate for about, oh, probably 9 or 10 inches in just straight Kevlar. And that will become our loop core, which will get pulled all the way through and out the back up here. That'll make an eye. That's an English eye braided into the end of this whip that will hold almost 400 pounds and should be long lasting for holding crackers. But my fingers are starting to cramp up because I've been doing this for an hour and 57 minutes, including beveling the 4 major strands. I try and keep this all flat and laying perfectly. It's very difficult. It wants to curl around and roll instead of staying nice and flat. That's usually how I break my fingernails off. But you guys see how fine that is? So anyway, if you guys had a fun time watching me braid, or some of you still there, I see there's 12 of you that are watching currently. I had a few hundred watch me before, but I was doing more interesting things. If you like people making stuff and sharing ideas on how to go about doing stuff or how they've figured out how to do stuff, consider subscribing, liking my videos. There's a bunch of videos I've got try and share how I go about doing things so that it might help somebody else get excited about making whips or braiding stuff. And now my hands are going to fight me. So anyway, you get the idea. I'm going to make it solid 9 inches, which will double back through this whole tube. So, but one thing you learn after you've done this for a while is if your hands start cramping up, give your hands a break or they will break you. It will force the issue. That's how I go about building a ceremonial whip. I'll show you the rest of the whip. Give you some ideas to what that looks like. Thank you very much for watching, tuning in. Again, like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I try and share what I do, but it's hard to get the house silent enough to hang out and work. Thanks a lot. Have a great night.